Welcome back to Femographics. I'm Shelby Evans. When I was 20, I spent the savings from my summer job to go to New York and watch the US Open alone for 2 days, where I got to see Serena Williams on Arthur Ashe Stadium. 4 years later, when my family and I were watching Ben Shelton and Tommy Paul on Ashe, I may have joined in with the crowd booing Aaron Rodgers, and he may have tore his ACL a week later. I think She's the Man is one of the greatest sports movies of all time, and I do think it helps that it is Shakespeare's Twelfth Night. And I am a sports journalist. In this episode, I'm sharing more from my conversations with John Pierce and Carlton Hawkins. Part of what inspired me to begin this podcast was not just all the surprise comments I've gotten about being a woman who knows sports I've gotten in my life, but also this influx of friends I had getting into sports for the first time. My own algorithm introduced me to Morgan Riddle years ago when she first started making tennis fashion content. For me, it was an enjoyable pairing to my already existing tennis fandom. But in the comments of her videos, I was seeing people share their first experience watching the sport through her content. And there are larger examples of how these outside factors are bringing new fans into sports spaces. Perhaps you know an artist, Taylor Swift, and when she started attending NFL games years ago, it brought on this whole new conversation of what it meant to be a football fan, how to watch it, how to cover it, how to enjoy it. And heated rivalry is another example I bring up in my questions I feature later. I've had this really positive experience with other interests or hobbies of mine, like contemporary queer romances, becoming more relevant in the sports I already enjoy watching, like hockey. But for some people, the instant success of the show led to hockey becoming a brand new interest, just like Morgan Riddle's videos brought in new tennis fans. So I asked John and Carlton the same set of questions about these scenarios to dig into what having this larger tent of fans means for sports as a whole. But this was sort of an audience segment coming into a sport that wasn't planned, and it was maybe a bit of an earthquake or a little bit of a unanticipated shock. So, this group, and I'm going to generalize sort of probably who they are, which is, they were Gen Z millennial women who probably went to college, have a disposable income, they haven't maybe traditionally watched sports, if not hockey, and they probably are really motivated by personal stories, having that connection, and crave that storytelling about people. So when it comes to that, there was also this history in the NHL of, they had some issues with pride nights between players, between Russian nationals a couple of years ago. Maybe doesn't align with this influx of people that are either really supportive of the LGBTQ community, if not identify themselves. So how did this disrupt the NHL? Were they prepared for this, or is this an example of how fast things are moving these days?
Yeah, I think of it like I don't think it's a new phenomenon. I think we all witnessed it last year when Taylor Swift started going to Kansas City Chiefs games, right? It isn't LGBTQ, but it's
Mm-hmm.
the same premise, like a brand new fan base, a brand new group of people started paying attention to something that they had not been paying attention to before for a reason that has really little to do with like the X's and O's of different plays on the field. So some people who were in the sport resented the amount of screen time Taylor Swift was getting. Other people were like, thank God, like all these new people are coming in. Let's welcome them and share more stories and do more like more merchandise that is interesting to women instead of just like you're sized for women, things like that. So it's a gift horse. You can look at it as like a burden, or you can look at it and say, thank God, like and it doesn't really for sports marketers who are smart, it doesn't matter. Like there's an old saying that says, it doesn't matter why someone's there as long as their money is green. Right? So if they're there because, they watched a show, that introduced them to the sport of hockey, and they're watching the game, they're watching the game for an entirely different reason than other fans are. It's entertainment. Like
Hmm.
we're not splitting an atom out there. Like we're literally just having fun. It matters not who wins and who loses. We're all entertainers, putting on a good show, doing our level best.
And a great example of the Taylor Swift as well as an example of this. How you're very simple, like it's entertainment, but is there the risk of by welcoming this new group that maybe, like you were mentioning, some old traditional fans or segments weren't as welcoming towards? Is there the risk of alienating an old, really loyal group when you do this, or is it mostly water under the bridge? They move on.
I think the discussion around is it good or bad for the game is just clickbait. Like people are going to watch the games who learned about it through a scripted series. And if they have a good time at the game, if they think the music is good and they feel welcomed, or they watch it on TV and they're entertained, and there's stories about the players that showcase their home life and their motivations, great. And if somebody takes offense to things that were already happening anyway, like we're already doing all of those things, then I guess like there's nothing you can do about that. People get offended for all kinds of reasons. But if as a marketer, you recognize, like, remember that I can only control the 30 at the top and the 30 at the bottom. And if you know, I don't I don't know what I would do differently if I knew there were more uh, Gen Z coming to the game who were interested in LGBTQ stories. I don't know like what I would do differently. I'd play the same music. I would, in between, periods, I would have the same kind of things on the scoreboard. I would just welcome them as I would anybody else. And because I don't ask people when they come in, like, what your politics are. I don't ask you like, what do you feel about, this issue or that issue? I just like they're all there to have fun.
Yeah, yeah. And I think one of my other questions, too, in regards to this influx of women, maybe it wasn't on their radar before, maybe they had felt unwelcome, maybe they just generalized and assumed they weren't.
Yeah.
But why was that?
Because
there's
most of
this.
the people who work in sports are men. So the tendency to market to men because that's what they know. It's only, when I was the CMO at the Coyotes, I have, I would pay attention I'd ask my wife and my daughter, like, what do you guys think about this? And they would look at it completely differently. So I think, the more women that are in leadership roles in sports teams, and there's way more now than there was. I don't have the stat, but way more. So as the owners of teams become, as women take on ownership roles in teams, things change. So like, why aren't there more uh, merchandise available, that is interesting to women, right? It doesn't have to be like for women, like it doesn't have to be women to cut or be pink and have flowers and whatever on it, but interesting to women, you know? Why don't they consult women on what that should look like? Have women as part of the fashion group, like those are all things that trust me, that they know these sports marketers today are being challenged to grow fan bases and increase revenue. And if they think there's even the slightest opportunity to do that by making it more comfortable, making better offerings for women, they're going to do that.
But when it comes to these segments and, not forgetting about the personas that you have, what does it look like when there's a surprise influx of this persona? And I think a good example is Taylor Swift fans watching the Chiefs all of a sudden, or the heated rivalry fans deciding that hockey was going to be it this winter. Uh,
Or even the Caitlin Clark situation that's bringing all these right wing, not trying to show my colors, people to this sport. It is the influx causes what I say the natural reaction that people that have always existed. So it's really interesting. There's an ownership and there's a what I found in sports, there is a customer, the most loyal customer that feels a kinship of understanding what's next or understanding what are the best players, who should I be looking for, what are the up and coming, just becoming such more of an ally of that sport and basically getting really into it. So I'm a cycling fan, right? So I watched the Tour de France for over 20 years. There's not that many people that watch that, but I understand it well. I understand what's actually happening. So if there was a big influx of people just wanting to talk about it, I would explain it to them. But some people that like me would get annoyed with that new group because I have to educate you and you're trying to make it into something American. Like there's this territoriality that exists with those different types of segmentation, but I can't ignore that. What I have to do is take advantage of it. What I have to do is if I'm in the NFL, I have to figure out a way to placate my current customers and then warmly bring the new customers in without alienating this customer. So it's actually a tightrope that you have to walk depending on the sport and depending on how you want to play it. So it is an interesting concept. I think social media allows more education, more opening the door to more people. It familiarizes people. Like people didn't know what offsides was 20 years ago. Now you can go on social media and understand what offsides in soccer is. You can understand the WNBA game. I worked in the NBA. I know that the WNBA game is more skill driven than actually athletic. And it's no offense to athleticism, but it's more skill. Uh, it's more physical than sometimes the NBA. It actually is really embedded in that type of culture. So it's one of those things that you understand and you know how to sell to that segment. And then bringing in the new segment, you want to emphasize somebody like Caitlin Clark and some of the other flashier players that are coming in that are even more skilled and provide some more excitement and are willing to take more chances. So it really is, it's a balance. And you can get lopsided.
And when the goal is to make money for an organization, obviously the more people wanting to spend money is good, but
Mhm.
do you manage those expectations? I think there are going to be more examples of this. And
Mhm.
how do marketers prepare better for these kind of discourses and differences
I
existing
don't
in
think
their
you
fan
can.
base?
It's one of the things that's interesting is I can't control your opinion about said sport or your opinion about these new people coming in. There's always going to be soccer snobs. There's always going to be, they exist, right? I mean, there's always going to be, the Mercury is a great example. They really leaned into, I'm going to say this incorrectly, but LGBTQIA.
LGBTQ.
Yes, yeah. They
You
really
got
leaned
it.
into that when they first started, and it's the basis of their foundation. So they definitely need to continue to do that, continue to focus on that customer, but also let this other group in. So it's kind of like we've got to remain inclusive with our marketing and not try to alienate either group. That takes real effort and it takes that, but you have to welcome them in by educating them, by bringing information in. Look, you just said it. The reason I market the heck out of the Dodgers series when Otani comes in is because I know I'm going to get more eyeballs. We are going to sell more to Japanese corporations. We're going to sell more partnerships to them. We're going to be on TV in Japan because we're playing them. So you have to lean into that. But you also have to say, well, you guys know baseball. He's the greatest baseball player that's come along since Babe Ruth. So you want to be part of that too. So I'll play it up with my customer base, but I also will attract the new customer base by bringing that in. It's kind of, you try to market to everybody. It's one of those interesting things because I've sold products for my whole life. Uh, I call segmentation and demographics, psychographics is concentric circles. You basically have concentric circles of, and I don't know if we went over this in class, but your base customer is always going to be in the middle, and you actually have to start to widen that view without alienating the inside. And I'm sure you have a Verizon phone or a AT&T phone, right? So if you've always had AT&T and everybody else is getting a new AT&T deal, you feel kind of alienated, right? That's what you have to do with sports too. You have to make sure that you actually build that out. So I don't know if that made sense, but that's kind of the process that I go through.
Thank you to John and Carlton for both sharing their wisdom with me. That was a lot of marketing in the last couple of episodes, but I promise I've saved the best for last. Next time, I'll be joined by Phoenix sports reporter Jake Garcia. I circle back to how newsrooms are keeping up with the modern audience and the challenges of covering sports as the modern reporter.